The collapse of competence, or what street interviews reveal about the future of a free society. Hello, I am Dr. K. Paul Stoller. You've seen the videos? Someone walks up to ordinary adults on the street and asks questions a competent 12-year-old should answer without hesitation. What country is the Great Wall of China in? How many moons does Earth have? Who fought in the American Civil War? What is 7 times 8? The answers range from bewildering to surreal. Europe, Thailand. Blank stares. People counting on their fingers and still getting it wrong. We tell ourselves the videos are heavily edited. They almost certainly are. But that doesn't answer the real question. Why are there enough spectacularly wrong answers to create an entire genre of entertainment? The street interviews simply make visible what surveys have documented for years. Large numbers of American adults cannot identify the 3 branches of government. Many cannot explain the purpose of the Constitution. Many cannot locate major countries on a map. Basic history, geography, civics, and elementary mathematics are no longer reliably shared knowledge. This is not a fringe problem. It is a measurable pattern. The first mistake is to assume this is about intelligence. It isn't. Some of these same people may be gifted artists, excellent mechanics, successful entrepreneurs, or wonderful parents. The problem is orientation. Every civilization depends on its citizens possessing a shared mental map of reality. Where places are, how history unfolded, why institutions exist, how causes produce consequences, what counts as fact versus opinion. Without that map, intelligence becomes increasingly disconnected from wisdom. A brilliant mind without orientation can still become hopelessly lost. Here is the greatest paradox of our age. Never before has knowledge been so available. Never before has ignorance seemed so comfortable. Every smartphone contains more information than any emperor or university possessed throughout most of human history. Yet many people have outsourced not only memory, but curiosity. Not only facts, but judgment. Knowledge once had to be carried inside the mind. Today, it is assumed to exist somewhere else until needed. The danger isn't using Google. The danger is losing the habit of understanding. Civilizations are not maintained by search engines. They are maintained by citizens who have internalized enough reality to recognize when something doesn't make sense. Americans still celebrate freedom, but the meaning has quietly changed. The founders never imagined freedom as permission to remain intellectually unformed. Their concept of liberty assumed responsibility, the responsibility to know, to think, to participate, and to bear the consequences of one's choices. Freedom without discipline eventually ceases to be freedom. It becomes dependency. A citizen incapable of understanding the world soon becomes dependent upon others to explain it. And whoever explains reality ultimately governs those unable to evaluate it for themselves. Ignorance has always existed. What has changed is that it no longer carries much social cost. There was once quiet embarrassment in not knowing. Today, there is often little embarrassment at all. In some circles, displaying expertise is viewed with suspicion, while displaying certainty without knowledge is rewarded with attention. Entertainment has replaced orientation. Validation has replaced education. Feeling informed increasingly substitutes for becoming informed. The result is a population that consumes narratives more readily than it evaluates evidence. Many highly competent people report the same quiet experience. They increasingly feel like the smartest person in the room. I don't believe this necessarily reflects growing brilliance. It reflects something more concerning. The average room has changed. Conversations require more simplification. Basic historical references require explanation. Shared assumptions disappear. Eventually, competent people begin seeking one another because constant translation becomes exhausting. That isn't elitism, it's adaptation. And it should concern us. Civilizations depend upon a sufficiently large middle of competent citizens. When that middle shrinks, the burden carried by those who remain grows heavier. Every functioning society depends on people most of us never think about. The engineer who understands bridges, the physician who understands physiology, the electrician who understands power grids, the pilot who understands weather, the judge who understands law, and the voter who understands history. These systems continue functioning only because enough people still know what they are doing. Civilizations rarely collapse because everyone suddenly becomes incompetent. They collapse because too few competent people remain to sustain systems built by previous generations. Complex societies fail long before their monuments collapse. America is nowhere near collapse. Our technological capacity remains extraordinary. Our strongest institutions still produce brilliance. But civilizations are not preserved by their strongest institutions alone. They are preserved by the everyday competence of ordinary citizens. A republic assumes that enough people possess sufficient knowledge to govern themselves. Once that assumption begins to fail, self-government becomes increasingly fragile. The deeper problem is not that some people cannot answer simple questions. The deeper problem is that our culture no longer reliably teaches adults that knowing matters. Competence has become optional. Orientation has become optional. Discipline has become optional. Yet self-government requires all three. The young adults stumbling through those street interviews are not the disease. They are the symptom. The real question is whether we still possess the will to rebuild a culture that expects adults to know enough about the world to remain genuinely free. Because civilizations are rarely lost in a single dramatic moment. They are usually lost one forgotten fact, one abandoned standard, and one unformed citizen at a time. Can a free republic survive if it no longer transmits competence?